Greetings, family, and welcome to the Art of Rising. You know, we're all about rising the vibration in your consciousness. We're doing something very special today. We're working with the panelists here, and these panelists are working with herbs and wellness and all of that good stuff. And after a little bit of technical difficulty, we're back right here. So I say we jump right back into it. Let's go. Introduce yourself. Tell us your company and where you live. If we can start with that. Brother GJ, go for it, brother.
Yes. How's everyone doing? My name is GJ, and I'm interested in what I call holistic solutions. So we are P1 Health. This is the name of our organization. And when I say holistic solutions, a lot of people will come to my table and they'll see, or to my website, and they'll see, herbs and oils and powders and all these different supplements, what a lot of people will say they are. And I like to give people those tools, but I like to also give them an entire toolkit that they can utilize those tools at the highest level. Because when we're just using herbs and we don't have the correct, framework, and we're kind of just blindly taking a product each and every day, we're going to get minimal results. But we want to take everything with intention, with the correct practices, with the correct mindset. There's a million different tools to boxes to check off, rather. And that's what I'm passionate about, and giving people that entire toolkit so that they could be successful in transforming their lifestyle and their mindset.
Super powerful, brother. Appreciate you. Brother Danny, go ahead.
Yes, Danny. I go by the People's Herbalist. I am a specialist in adaptogenic herbs. Also, I'm a formulator of different unique products and ways for people to consume these adaptogenic herbs to help with their stress levels and their immune function and just overall well-being. I got into this because I was trying to find holistic solutions for people dealing with cancer. My best friend's dad, stage 4 lung cancer. At the time, he didn't want to take chemotherapy. But there was no real options. And that drove me to look and search and see what was available and what was out there. And I could see published research in other parts of the world, in other countries, and the habits that they've done, and was really actually infuriated because it just wasn't a viable option or a spoke about option by doctors to patients. And that really made me upset, and that made me dedicate, all my time and efforts to advancing the herbal sciences and elevating humanity with that. And, doing case studies and research on my own and bootstrapping it and, trying to make sense of the data points that I've read, and I needed to see them in real time before I have the confidence to go and tell the entire world, like, hey, look, this stuff is actually good for you, because I've seen it work for others, not just reading it in a paper or, somebody else's experience, but, seeing it myself is very, very impactful for my mission and why I have so much passion behind bringing these herbs to people. So that's a little bit how I started and where I came from.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Brother Ishan, go ahead.
Peace. Yeah, my name is Ishan. I'm from Sayreville, New Jersey. I go by the Wellness Plug. So anything to do with people all around New Jersey, as wellness providers, studios. I'm just like a connector. And I work with Danny as his event curator and ambassador at the People's Herbalist. But my main passion is actually bridging the gap between people, like the regular people, finding wellness more enjoyable and creating spaces where people can actually be real, raw, and find themselves to enjoy the arts of healing.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I was reading some of your bio, and you speak about this event coordinator, right? So I was wondering what elements do make a wellness event truly powerful and transformative, in your opinion?
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of it comes down to the people that are coming in and the environment that you're welcoming to the people. Specifically, the right questions need to be asked, the right connections, the people that are in the space are getting to know each other on a deeper level, not very surface. And sharing stories. I think storytelling is a really powerful tool, and letting people be themselves while sharing their own story is a way to let people kind of just be okay with, you know, being on different levels.
Yeah, I got to piggyback off that because it is a really important concept to make sure that the space that the event is being held is comforting and inviting and relaxing. And I just gotta say, Ishan and GJ, they know how to facilitate that because, you know, having an event is more than just the information that's being shared. It's more than just, you know, the physical locale, but it's also the intention behind it, the sounds that you're hearing, the things that you're smelling, you know, the things that you get to taste, the energy that is, you know, reverberated through either the crystal or through some of the sound instruments. But most importantly, it's the coordinators and what they're trying to fulfill that room with. And I tip my hats because I'm probably the elderman in this panel right here. But GJ and Ishan, they really get it, and they know how to coordinate a nice venue and space to let people heal and learn.
Yeah, for sure. I met you guys over at Nicholas Brooklyn, so shout out to Monique and Nicholas Brooklyn. They do some wonderful events there, and I couldn't miss this one, man. And I know that GJ was the one that was spearheading this, and he came with all the fire of knowledge and things like that. Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate you, GJ. I was wondering if you could share some of your experience, even at that event or some past ones that you've seen where the information that you gave, you know, helped to change people's life and making an impact.
Yeah, so the main thing, that was my first event that I had actually hosted myself.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Nice.
before that, what I do usually is I do consultations with people on the phone. So I'll make, you know, different types of content, and people will reach out to me, they'll email me, and I really do find joy in helping people like use these tools, and then like kind of like holding their hand through the process so that they can be that version that I know they are. Because you know, I like to say that sickness is not really real. Like it's just like the body going into the healing process. But people suffer because they identify with like, I have this cancer, like how Danny mentioned, I have this particular disease, and then they allow it's like their own mind is making them sick. So then I like to come in when people are like, I got high blood pressure, I got diabetes, I have XYZ, and I'm like, okay, you're taking this medication, you're living this lifestyle, and it's debilitating. So I want to take your hand and I want to show you how you can transform yourself, you know. And I feel like that's empowering to the individual when you can see somebody transform themselves. So I don't even think the term healer exists. It's like you're just facilitating healing. You're just like holding space for somebody to do what they need to do. So I think that's what really brings me joy and what makes me want to do it, because in today's modern world, there's so much of what we would call disease. But on the positive note, we could look at it at the other spectrum and say there's so many people who are beginning to heal, you know. So that's how I would like to view it as well. So being able to facilitate that with other individuals, not only through herbs, through adaptogens, but through movement, like how Ishan is doing, and then through the ancient wisdom, plus, you know, the modern science, which is like how I mentioned before, is converging together to bring us that real, like, holistic view of what life is and how we can approach life to, you know, win life, to be a champion of life instead of to be a victim of life. So
Yeah. I try to watch my self-talk also, almost always. Like I don't claim it. Like I am sick or I have this or no. It's always I'm experiencing. this at the moment. That's it. That's all. And then a lot of it has to do with energy also. You know, for me, and I know that ancient people, and I'm sure you can attest to this too, GJ, is that the ancient saw things as energy, and then when dis-ease came, it was almost like stuck in that area. That energy was just stuck. That's it. We just have to move it so it could keep going. That's it. Uh-huh. So brother Ishan, perhaps you can tell us some small daily practices that you recommend for your holistic lifestyle, because I
Yeah.
know that you're working with this new concept and my idea, and I'd love for you to talk more about it, and what are some of the things that you're doing to create more of this.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest topics that we talked about Roots and Resonance was the fascia, and like this new understanding of the fascia gives us a look on moving our bodies a different way instead of the traditional gym. So what I picked up is something called rope flow, and it's basically using a rope to like move your spine, like the spinal health, and using your spine to get into this flow state. But it also really improves your coordination, your rhythm, your joint health, and then like that connection to your right and left brain, because your right hand is connected to your left brain and your left hand is connected to your right brain. Whenever you're doing something on both sides and you're crossing the midline, you allow the brain to develop these state of minds that isn't possible without crossing the midline.
Right. How about some of your other brothers? Have you experienced this fascinating I want to say exercise, but it's not. Yeah, go ahead, brothers. Go ahead.
Right. Nah, rope flow it's very unique in that it is like an exercise, but it's very subtle. I mean, you can go, your intensity can be as much as you want. You can swing that thing and go fast. Think about almost doing a jump rope, but you're not jumping over the rope. You're just using your arms, wrists, and shoulders in that same uh, motion. But there's a lot more maneuverability that you can unlock with using these ropes. And I think it's a perfect representation. I'm not sure the exact measurements of the rope, but I feel like the way that they swing around your body, it pretty much mimics your biofield.
I was
And like it is really unique, and you can almost have a visual representation by swinging this rope around how your energy field is fluctuating back and forth, and you can spin. It's coordination, it's connecting right and left hemispheres, it's opening different parts of your spine. There's shoulder joint maneuverability, wrist. There's a lot. I know personally I suffer from stiff shoulders from time to time, and I'm in my upper 30s, so these young whippersnappers, they all right. But I be getting stiff from time to time. But this right here, Ishan was showing me some of the different maneuvers, and I think it's so impactful, and it's a good tool that can be used for all ages. And I can definitely see the potential in the nursing homes, also in the kindergarten. Like there's so many different ways to use this, and so many different populations that can experience a lot of benefits. And then once you start outside of the physical activity, start looking at the energetics that is associated with moving this rope in that flow pattern. This is a great teaching tool that I think it's probably gonna. I can see Ishan's passion behind this. I've actually done it and I love it. We're gonna incorporate this into a lot of different events that we do outside of just having herbs and yummy food and high nutrition and being grounded, but also incorporating that movement portion. It's gonna be really great. That rope flow is definitely the truth.
Yeah, for real, for real, brother GJ.
Yeah, I've actually also, tried out the rope flow introduced by Ishan. It is an amazing practice, and I like how he said that it can bring you into like a flow state. Because when I first did it, it very much reminded me of like martial arts, because I also grew up doing martial arts. I always like played sports and was an athlete, but from being always playing a contact sport, from either martial arts to football, I've had several surgeries. I've had bulged discs. I've had concussions. I've had all that type of stuff. So and being into health, I had to say to myself, like, why am I experiencing this, bodily suffering when I should be doing some other type of exercise? So about 5-6 years ago, I started to do Tai Chi and Qigong, like as a health practice for myself and for an energetic practice. And I've been mentioning this kind of theme of like modern science and ancient wisdom. And I believe that I know that the ancients knew about the fascia. And this is why they had the practice of Tai Chi and Qigong, because it was a form of promoting flow and promoting movement into the more subtle energetic pathways and into the more subtle parts of the body that maybe are rejected, especially in today's modern day and age of like linear movements and moving as if you're like a crab. Like there's no like flow movement, there's no, in the modern way of doing things. And rope flow reminds me of like a modern way of doing some type of Tai Chi movement. Especially when you incorporate like that more flow-based way of doing it, because some people, you could swing that thing like 100 miles an hour and it could be like you're doing like a like Muay Thai or something, or you could do it at almost like a meditation. So it's a matter of how you want to go about swinging that rope. But either way, it's a practice that's bringing you a high level of physical health, but also I believe it could bring you energetic health if you approach it the correct way.
Yeah, I'd like to share one thing, because what I've realized with this practice is that obviously everybody is different. There's no flow that is going to be the same. So in my eyes, it's kind of like a self-expression. So people who can't move things, that get stuck energetically, they can use the rope as a tool to move emotions, or when they're feeling things that are uncomfortable, as a real mental and emotional tool.
When we speak about energy and the physical body, some of these things are like unseen, and it's a shame how we cannot realize some of these things. It's just whoever built us and where we're at within the humanity at the moment, right? Because we don't know what the future brings. We're evolving all the time, but to remain in that flow state, it reminds me of Stephen Kotler has a great book called Stealing Fire. If anybody's read this one before, or the audio book, it's fascinating. And Stealing Fire comes with one of the Greek gods, right? The one who stole fire from the gods and gave it to humans, right? If anybody knows the god's name. But in any case, he speaks about what is that fire that we have, right? It's something that's burning inside of us, and many of us don't have it or don't want it, but once we get it, we experience this flow state that we're all talking about. Like professional athletes experience this, painters experience it, writers, directors, where you could be doing something and you'd be like, oh my God, like 8 hours pass by. I don't believe it, because you remain in that flow state, so thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to working with those ropes, man, for real.
I want to add upon the whole concept of flow state really quick, just because one of the topics that I touched upon at the Roots and Resonance event was the endocannabinoid system. And man, that system is like so interesting, and I wanted to talk about it much more. I kind of wanted to like condense the presentation, but for anyone that doesn't know, just to give like a quick synopsis, there's different endocannabinoids, which means that there's cannabinoids that's produced within the own body. There's particular enzymes that produce and break down those cannabinoids, and then there are receptors that receive these cannabinoids throughout the entire body. And when we talk about flow state, it's so interesting that we have this cannabinoid that's produced within the body that I've been really interested in for years, called anandamide. So when people are in that flow state and we're feeling like bliss and joy, we're releasing this anandamide, and it's being sent throughout the entire body. And this is what's being released in the body when people are exercising, when people are in that flow state. When you talk about athletes and directors, or even yogis who are in meditation, or even normal people who are practicing, quote unquote spiritual practices, they're releasing this anandamide. And I find it so amazing when we look at, the chemical compounds and the hormones within the body that are like physically explaining the emotions that we're feeling, because this is like the interface once again between energy and science. So I thought that was a very, I just wanted to add that just to explain that like flow state can be scientifically explained. Like it could be scientifically explained for anyone that doesn't believe in this type of concept. I want to prove skeptics wrong, basically is what I'm saying.
Excellent. Yes, Danny, you spoke earlier about those conversations, the words that we're using, right? And I was just speaking with the brother yesterday about, in ancient times, our ancestors, sometimes they explain some event where the gods were punishing us, right? Right? But in modern day, we have this different language now where we go, oh, that's the barometric pressure of the heat with cold colliding, and we get the El Nino storms and these types of things. But maybe we're just explaining what the gods do.
Right.
I don't know. But
I think that's a great concept. I mean, it's matter and energy. I mean, we look at our scientific is usually mostly based on matter, but the energy, consciousness, the integration of both of those things. Energy has a scientific measurement, but consciousness is just out of there. We got no concept to actually grasp, measure, or conceptualize consciousness in a way that science can put into words. And that's the exact same process here. And finding ways to explain the unexplainable with our lexicon of language, which we basically have we have a small box of tools that we can use with our mouth to explain these concepts that are driven by nature and creation as best as we can. So it's a very, very intricate. It's fun, I think, honestly, to be able to explain one phenomenon in two different ways, from a scientific mindset or perspective, and then also from an energetic or esoteric perspective as well. And he's literally saying the same exact thing. And I think that's one of the most impactful tools that these two young brothers here have. And that's the ability to see from both lenses and to explain to people in one way or the other, depending on who the conversation is with. And that's, in my opinion, is going to be the most useful tool to help our traditional medical system to catch up, or I should say, to slow down and catch up to what we've already known and for many years throughout many cultures. So this is it's a great tool, man. Flow rope is a great representation of that. Obviously, our biofield and our fascia system is also a really good interconnecting point. But taking our consciousness and blending it with emotions, and then the biochemical associated with emotion is another way to start pulling these things together in a sandwich that makes sense for the vast majority of people, and can be explainable and understandable from our experts in the medical system, and also through our professionals on the holistic side as well.
Right. For sure. Prometheus is the god that I was speaking about earlier. I was thinking about it. But Prometheus is the one that stole fire from the gods and gave it to humans. And then they got him and they punished him for that. But now that humans have that fire, whatever that fire is, we need to use it. And then another thing came up too, when you speak about language and these explanations with modern science and the health industry and all of these trends that are coming in, right? It makes me think of another book too. It's by Makio Kaku. It's called Hyperspace. And one of the points he was making was, imagine that there's a lake with fish and they live with each other. They explain to each other all these kinds of, concepts about like when the rain hits the lake, what, scientists come and go, oh, that's the Promaterata trees, when it hits the water and you're right. All the other fish are like, wow, But imagine, he says, if you picked up that fish and looked at it in the eyes out of the water and then threw it back into the water, what stories that fish would have for the other people, right? Trying to explain, like, hey, there's something else out here, man. Like, I'm trying to tell you, and everybody's like, nah, get out of here, bro. Like, that doesn't even make sense. You use it, what, you taking herbs now, and right? Working with energy and ropes. Come on, man. No.
I think one of the greatest tools that we have nowadays is different ways to measure energy, because there are different things to use and like to measure EMFs, for example, which we use all the time. Even in hospital systems, they use what is the EEG, or is that what it said? What it's called?
Yeah.
So they're EKG maybe, yeah. So they're literally reading electrical readings.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
That's with the
definitely it's funny how they are very accepting and very understanding of the science behind frequencies and energy when they want to measure things. But then when it comes to understanding our bodies and how this stuff actually interplays with our health and cellular activity, then it's like, oh no, that's woo-woo. Like, no, it's not. You rely on it very much so to actually do your job.
Right.
And you know it's real. So if you know it's real in one aspect, then you have to know it's real on every other aspect as well.
Right. It makes me think of Reiki. Reiki is the same thing. Like, it's this ancient technology of measuring things and moving energy. But people are like, oh, that's woo-woo, man, But then scientists are like, hey, wait a minute now. There's something to this now,
I want to touch on one thing, because we were in a Morel Fest this weekend, and one of the topics was on osteopathic medicine. So using your hands, like osteopath is also kind of like denoted at the same note as a medical doctor. So they do the same trainings. But back in the day, osteopaths were hands-on. So they manually shifted bones, and primarily they were known for being energetic healers using their hands. But they, kind of changed the wordings around, and they've stuck to the Western side of system. But this girl, Aisha, she's bringing that back, the conversation back of how, like, she's in osteopathic school and using the hands as a healing modality, very similar to Reiki. But the energetic quality of using your hands and your body to move your joints very subtly, but like in a way that actually allows flow to happen. And another thing that she touched upon is psychedelics, and Danny actually talked about this. We actually talked about this at Roots and Resonance a lot, and how to use this, honesty medicine to help us have build the conversation forward for humanity.
The ultimate exploring tool for what consciousness is. It allows people to see in a way that they've never seen before, and you can never put it into words. You can't conceptualize it for anybody. It has to be an experience that you've done, that you've had, for you to actually understand it. So there's a I seen I think it was a meme. Someone says, like, our country is ran by people who've never done mushrooms. And the people that have done mushrooms know why this is terrible. Because it's just the ability to see and to look at what we're doing from a different perspective, a different lens. Like, or I should say, a veil is dropped, and you can see the reality for what it really is, and how we're impacting negatively our society with the things that we consider normal.
Right. For sure. Yeah, the word is called ineffable. Ineffable means that humans don't have the language to explain what those things are. We like to explain everything, but there's just some things that we just don't have the language. People have to just experience it. I know that the Johns Hopkins University is making groundbreaking, breakthroughs through some of these plant medicines. Even other things like MDMA and LSD, which are synthesized and formed in the lab and stuff like that. Great for like PTSD, deep depressions, like end of life. Like, oh my God, it's just great.
I like to say they are oftentimes a cure for fear. It's giving you perspective, like, oh man, this is not the end. This is all connected. We're all connected. Having that peace inside, it really has transformational impacts for people, especially in end of life care, especially when they're in depression, especially when they have a lifestyle situation where there's no hope, and the only thing is despair. This has very, very transformational capabilities for a lot of people.
Yeah, it does seep into all different parts, especially like with people, when you speak of that end of life situations, often seniors are placed inside of these warehouses, because that's basically what they are, just to sit around and wait, and different things. I don't know if you saw that documentary came out some years ago about where the gentleman had brought music into senior citizen homes. It was just music. And people who were just like stuck in these things, like not moving, basically nothing, he bought a bunch of Walkman and put the earphones on them, bro. People came alive, bro. Just fascinating. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And nowadays I see a lot of people becoming death doulas. So
I just interviewed another sister. I didn't even know they existed. A death because a doula is usually when they have. I'm sorry to cut you off, brother. It's usually when people, women help other women to give birth. Those are doulas. But now they have death doulas. Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. No, I mean, I think it's very new to me. Like I seen maybe like within the year, I seen at least 8 or 10 people that are becoming these death doulas and walking these people and that road together. So there are people that are transitioning or actually enjoying that experience and not dreading it.
Yeah, it should be like that. There's some studies about the psilocybin saying where people are in these last days situation, and what they said, what it does is it doesn't give them like, oh, everything, I'm gonna be fine, everything, life is gonna go on. No, it gives them like, hey, whatever's happening, it's all right, it's okay, it just is. It's the isness of it. So I found that fascinating.
The isness business.
That's
I
it.
like that. I like that. It's the isness of it.
Perhaps one of you brothers can tell me, how would you balance that herbal wisdom with that modern day wellness trends?
I think the best and most important thing is to be outside and physically move. That's number one. There's got to be some physical activity, and there has to be some type of connection with fresh air, sunshine, and trees or moving water of some sort. And then having your herbals as your hydration portion while you're moving through those things, having your herbals as the way that you're breaking your fasts, having your herbals as just a intricate part of your nutrition portion. Don't look at your herbs as your medicine, right? Think of it as your food. It's a lot easier that way, even though they say food is your medicine, right? Let your food be like medicine. Let your herbs be a part of your dietary regimen. Right now, there's concerted effort to minimize, regulate, and remove supplements in many aspects.
Yep.
People that are in the field, in the industry of selling herbal supplements, they know that they are cracking the whip. They are making it very hard for you to make online sales or even grow a supplement business. So I think that changing the entire verbiage and perspective of looking at herbs as supplements, they are not for supplementation. They are for nutrition aspects, dietary nutrition. That's probably the most important factor. Plus, being outside and moving. That's the goal. That's the goal.
Those herbals, I love that, because I had learned that, for instance, cannabis, it's a herb, right? You're supposed to eat it, right? But humans smoke it too and do other things with it, but it's an herb.
It's the first herb to be cultivated by humans. So that's a very important aspect. Like People think corn or maybe, you know, one of these crops.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was cannabis. This was the first thing that human beings actually started growing on purpose, to be used for medicine, to be used in food aspects. It has so many different industrial uses. It's incredible.
Of hemp, and
Yeah.
Right.
changed the game of the industry for everything. They use hemp plates, hemp clothing, hemp building.
Yeah.
We revert back to that. We will make a lot of different changes. And like GJ was mentioning, the endocannabinoid system, we legitimately have receptors in our body that are directly open to receiving cannabis-like molecules.
Right.
So we have anatomy that is totally in alignment with this plant. If we utilize this plant in the most appropriate way, there's a lot of different benefits that can be expounded upon.
Right.
Yeah,
I know
and
that.
when
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, when you talk about, you know, the various different uses of cannabis, man, like the whole concept of smoking it is pretty new. In my personal opinion, I feel like the ancestors have been making teas out of it. Of course, we know that the seeds are a complete protein, so like you can get so much. It literally contains all the 20 amino acids, so not just the 9 essential. It has everything in it, right? So we've got that. I know in Thailand they use their roots to make soup. You know, people use the leaves and they juice them. You could use every aspect of the plant, and of course, you mentioned the industrial aspect, the clothing, the rope. You could do so many different things with this amazing plant, and you know, this is why there was so much propaganda against this beautiful plant to try to get people away from it, because not only is it, you know, considered a mild psychedelic to transform your perspective and shift your mind depending on how you're using it, but you can also just use this to shift reality completely, because when you're dependent on plastic and you're dependent on all these synthetic compounds, you're slowly but surely killing your body, and you're basically shrinking your aura. So it's like you're shrinking your consciousness when you poison yourself slowly but surely.
Right.
But when we're connected with nature, and we're using natural tools like cannabis and like hemp to do all of our daily, instead of wearing polyester and wearing all these crazy things, we can wear natural things, and this will naturally increase our connection to the earth, which will increase our consciousness, because it's like the stronger your root system is, the higher you can reach. You know, it's just common sense.
Right. I know that the word canvas comes from cannabis. It comes from the same root, because the canvas on sails, you know, the people who would sail in boats, they would use the cannabis, you know, the fibers of it, bro, because it's so strong and long lasting, you know. So I love it, man. It's great knowledge that everybody needs to know. How about, what are some of the challenges that you guys have faced bringing holistic solutions to some of these communities, you know, especially communities that you would say they call them inner city, right? Which is just a term, right? But you know, maybe you can expand on that.
I'll tell you my experiences. The pushback, the attacks, the shadow banning, the removal and deletion of my social media pages. There is definitely a concerted effort to quell any fire to ignite holistic health. It is on purpose, and I have definitely been, I'll say, a target, not a victim, but I've been a target of, you know, kind of silencing some of the information that can be very valuable, especially in the inner cities, especially to the communities that don't have access to, you know, a lot of farmland and direct connections with nature. They got to kind of go out of their way to get out of the concrete jungle to find a little snippet and portion of where they can actually find some trees and greenery. But yeah, there is definitely you got to be careful of some of the platforms and what you're saying. Making claims is definitely one of the things that you can't do, no matter how much you've seen, how well. If you're going to use some of these public platforms, there's limitations on what you can say. If you're on your private, it'll be here on the podcast. We gotta have control over, the information that we put on. But there's definitely censors that wanna keep this information as closed lid as possible.
Yeah, I could definitely piggyback off that, because I've experienced that when I first started P1 Health. One of the products that really inspired me to do it was the brain cleansing tea that I have. I mentioned a lot of the herbs at the event, with like the harataki and all those different types of herbs. So with that being one of my main motivations to start this organization, like to bridge the gap, to use herbs to enhance consciousness and to cleanse the brain and to cleanse the body, I was so passionate about, like, wow, we can use this and like transform our whole perspective. And when I, first started, I was, no filter at all. I was just straight dragon breath, like just going crazy, like saying whatever on the camera. And they shut off my ads account, man, because I was talking about the pineal gland and talking about, like, its connection with consciousness, and when we get the fluoride off of it, we can experience, altered states and, expanded awareness. And there's a scientific aspect to it where it's like we're literally producing less hormones within this pineal gland when it's calcified and when it's being and it's intentionally being targeted. So when I was really going in on that, they shut off my ads account for no reason. I didn't get any refunds. You know what I mean? So that was just like a lesson that I guess had to be learned. So to where it's like, if you want to talk about these types of subjects and you want to get too in depth, we have to create and this is, I think, one of the main points of even holistic wellness and holistic solutions, is so that we can create our own stuff. We got to have our own media platform. We got to have our own land, our own industries. We got to have our own, our
communications.
Yeah, so that
we can. That's the crazy part.
And we
we will 100%.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like it's so important. When we talk about like the censorship and the quote unquote negative aspects to it, it's like it's really just a sign. Like, let's just come together and let's do what we need to do so that we can grow at a faster rate.
Yeah.
So
I would like to shout out like a few places that I know that are already doing it, so people can get into it. But the way forward, if you search up, they have an online business directory, a member map. It's a private community, but it's a global private community, but it's focused on building the new paradigm of Earth, like the alternative wellness, the farms, the homeschooling pods, finding community, building your tribe. It takes a village. So there's a lot of platforms out there nowadays that are doing exactly what we want to do, and we can support them, and then eventually we can own in our own local communities.
Yes. Brother Danny, did you have to step out? Or are you still with us? I know you had another meeting.
Yeah, I do gotta run, fellas. I appreciate you for having me on, man. I love having these conversations.
Okay.
Every time we have a room to elevate people with good information and knowledge, it's always a special time. So thank you.
Yep.
Omar, for having me on.
We'll put all your information in the show notes and all that. Let people know how to reach you. No worries about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm the People's Herbalist across the board, the website, the social medias, YouTube, whatever. You find me, the People's Herbalist. For the people.
Okay. Peace, brother. Peace.
Peace, y'all. Chat later.
Right. Good day, Jimmy. Peace.
I was thinking about the Venus Project. Has anyone heard about this?
No.
So this gentleman, his name was Jack Fresco. He was considered a free man. He wasn't bound by anything, so he had time to think about things and put things together. And he said, "Hey, what we're doing here in this society is not sustainable. We can't keep doing this forever. So." Ishan, you talk about those communities, the schooling and all of that. He was all about this, right? One of the things he said is that people who should be helping to run this planet should be scientists, right? Not politicians, No, because 2 and 2 is 4 here and in Alaska, and you see, so they work with facts. At least scientists work with facts, you know. And then he spoke about the food. You know, he said that every rooftop should have a garden. Every house that you see should have a garden where we're growing our food, you know. And he also introduced the silos, you know, where they would have different tiers of food, and these would be all around everywhere. People, right? Because I live in New Jersey, right next to Manhattan. But if something catastrophe was to happen, all the food is trucked into these places, bro. Like, we'd be majorly screwed.
Yeah, 100%. I've been growing my own food for the last 2 years at a community garden. So what makes this a little more different is that I'm also able to help people and educate them on why it's important to grow your own food. They might have been just doing it as a hobby, but now they actually realize the potential of it. Like, what if something does happen? You know, you never know what could happen. But another aspect of it is that I added is something called electroculture, where I'm wrapping a copper wire around a branch or a stick and placing it in the soil to increase my yields, increase the potential of the harmonics and the energetics of those plants, and the way that I ingest it would be a lot more beneficial to my energetic body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely, man. Me and Ishan, I feel like when I met him, I was like talking to an aspect of myself, man, because we're so interested in a lot of the same things, and we have a lot of passion for, you know, bringing that new world, and it's already here. You know, it's just a matter of it, you know, coming to fruition. But all these things that we talk about, you know, they're going to be coming into fruition for everyone to be able to see, and you know, when I wasn't in the city, because currently I'm in New York City, but I used to grow a bunch of my own food as well, man, in the backyard when I was living out in Oklahoma. And oh man, like the electroculture. And I also experimented, and I would love for scientific like studies to be done on these, you know, tools, these ancient tools. But like utilizing like grids in your garden, and utilizing like putting hematite and different magnets into the soil, so that like when we have this electric, you know, coil that's channeling, you know, that electric charge that's naturally within the atmosphere, we can ground that energy even more with particular minerals that are already natural and organic to the soil. But because they've been so depleted, and the soil and the earth has been so manipulated, we literally have to supplement in the same way that we have to heal our bodies and use these herbs. We have to herb the earth. Like, we literally have to re-herb the earth. So this is getting into something that I haven't really talked about a lot. Ishan knows about this, but I have sorry?
No, are you going to talk about your nonprofit?
Yeah. I have a nonprofit where I call myself we call ourselves Re-Life, because it's about bringing the life back to the earth. So Re-Life. And you know, I feel like the same way that we go about healing the body, we have to go about healing the earth, where it's like we have to come together. And like, you know, I get in a consultation with someone, and I'm like, okay, you know, you got to take this herb, you got to get outside, you got to ground yourself. We have to do the same thing with the earth, where it's like, okay, we need to get outside, we need to put these amazing plants into the ground, we need to put these perennials, these native perennials into the ground, we need to mulch the earth, we need to, you know, provide the natural wildlife. Like, the same thing that the body needs, we have to do it for the earth and the parts of the earth that have been, you know, raped and pillaged and destroyed. In the same way that these inner cities are figuratively, metaphorically, and sometimes literally being raped, like being destroyed from the inside out. So you know, that's what it's about. And it's all about, like how Ishan said, community, because Ishan said it takes a village, man. It takes a world, bro, to heal the world, man. Like, so I think it's all about just bringing us back together so that we can accomplish that goal, you know, because we need each other to do it.
For sure. I think one more thing is that last year I had the privilege to go to California for a music. Well, it was like a holistic conference. It was called Music in Sky. But right after that, I went to a farm upstate in California, and their farm is totally energetics. There's electroculture. There's something called biogeometry, where they're using patterns of these rocks and signatures to create resonances that is not possible unless you have it in a specific spiral pattern or a number. So there's so much information that we could use in gardening that's not, it's not there. We can bring that knowledge to the people. And then me and GJ are heading down to a sovereignty ranch next week or a week and a half from now. And it's called Confluence. It's a conference for all researchers, consciousness, holistic solutions. You can like think about like telepathy tapes, the new podcast that everybody's talking about. She's going to be there talking about like autism and like, you know, how a different perspective on that. So everybody's gathering at this one location on a ranch to say we're having it outside, outdoors, talking about the principles of building our new community. And so I'm really looking forward to that.
That's amazing. You know, often people say, man, things are getting crazy around here, man. I don't know what's going to happen. And, you know, I often tell them that sometimes things have to get a little more worse before they get better. Humans are just like that. We don't go to the doctor when we're feeling good, you know. You know, we go get help when we're not feeling good. And sometimes, you know, as humans, we wait too long. You know, I say, let's not wait, right? It makes me think of like Shiva, right? Shiva's the destroyer, right? But Shiva's also the creator too. You should say those two things in the same sentence, because as Shiva comes and destroys and moves the earth, right? New land, fertile land raises, seeds get dispersed, you know, things that you didn't see before are now there. So, you know, when you guys speak about those ancient, like, we should pay attention, man, to some of the ancient knowledge and scriptures that are out there, you know.
Yeah, especially you know, you talk a lot about gods and myths. That's one of my favorite topics is astrotheology, is understanding that a lot of these topics that we're talking about, these gods, are actually they're allegories for our planets, our stars, and how do we actually use that information to spiritually evolve? Because most of the time, a lot of people take these gods as literal beings, that they were here. I mean, I'm not here to say that they weren't, but I think what they were trying to claim is the aspect of the journey, the process of the journey, and the different archetypes that we all hold in each body.
For sure. The manifestation, different manifestations of whatever it is. And we spoke about that earlier, about the language. It's just the language, what we use to explain some of these things, you know. So I'm definitely with that. And we should learn from the ancients. Like they've written the blueprints. Everybody's out there trying to find the new, just like they go, oh, you know, how do I reinvent the wheel? You don't have to. There's a book out there on the wheel. In fact, it shows you how to use the wheel too.
Yeah. What Ishan said, man, I completely agree with that. And when we look at the ancients, like when you see, for example, like a volcano, and you mentioned the whole cycle of like destruction and creation, like that volcano is going to burst and it's going to destroy everything, but then it brings about that fertile, you know, new world, quite literally. And to somebody who doesn't have the scientific brain to be able to describe that, they're just going to view it as, you know, a type of phenomena. It's like, yo, this is some type of entity. This is an archetype that is showing us, like, you know, it's time for a reset, time for a rebirth. And the thing that I love about the ancients, and we can still see this when we look at, you know, what's called like Wu shamanism, or like, you know, the Eastern philosophies, or even here in, you know, the native land, they had these shamans who, in the same way that now you have a police officer, like shamans were, and this is research that you could look to, like it hasn't been hidden. Shamans were like police officers. They were hired to work in communities, to be facilitators of healing, to work to make sure that the agriculture was working right, because they were like energy doctors. You know what I mean? So they came in to be the doctor, the energetic doctor of the whole community. And, you know, they have stories where it's like, okay, it's dry outside and we don't have anything. The emperor is going to call, or the king is going to call the shaman, and the shaman's going to lead a dance and they're going to play drums, and then the rain comes. But you may look at that from like, oh, they're just working with energy. And to them, they were. but there is a science to that, because when you play the sounds and you're doing the dancing, and like how Ishan mentioned, these archetypes are in our body, we're literally calling upon these energies that are already within us, and we're pushing them out. And then we see that the clouds are condensing, and then we see that the rain starts to come, and then we have this intense gratitude and this intense joy, and then it goes into all these neurotransmitters being released. And the whole concept of consciousness is not created outside in, it's created inside out. So they were putting these practices into use by these things that I'm talking, or stopping a tornado from coming by doing a certain prayer. Like, these are things that you guys can look up. This is not like, I'm not making this up.
That I've literally had firsthand experience doing that at a festival where we all gathered in a circle and we pushed a hurricane, an earthquake, basically all it was the forest fire. Everything was heading towards us on the pinpoint, like right at us. 30 minutes intentional, like gathering and like, you know, praying about it and using the elements in our, it was gone. You could, if you saw the chart, you wouldn't believe it. It would go this way, then boom, straight right.
Incredible. That makes me think of Dr. Joe Dispenza, right? He makes a couple of books, one Becoming Supernatural, and wow, powerful. He said he was having like these huge church, you know, experience revivals, like he couldn't believe it. Where people just with intention, right? Because that's what prayer is. Like we're, you know, saying what is it that we want to happen, those intentions, and then things are happening. Oh man, powerful.
Yeah, that's, in my opinion, that's the true science, and that's what the herbs are all about, and that's what the psychedelics are all about. They're all so that you can get back to the point where you are self-sovereign, like you're self-regulating, you're self-governing, so that when there is some type of, you know, quote unquote negative situation that may be coming towards you, you have the entire toolkit within yourself, within your community, within your family, within whatever the case may be, to send away that quote unquote negative energy, or to transmute that energy to something that's going to benefit the community, benefit all beings. You know, that's the whole point, I believe, of life. It's like to continuously evolve and move forward and to minimize suffering, you know, and we have the opportunity to do that right here and now, but we just got to come together.
That's another thing that Jack Fresco was saying. He was like, look, we have everything here. We have the technology, like, to turn this world back to it's the way it's supposed to be, but people don't want to do it, bro.
I think it's the way that I've looked at it is because I've gone to so many festivals and I'm talking to these people. Everybody is scattered, but strategically and intelligently. So I feel like everybody's in a different location for the purpose of bringing the lighthouse and being the lighthouse in their location. So then we can start, you know, planting the seeds for the future. And you can see this in the kids that are growing up now. These kids are, first of all, emotionally very, very intelligent. They're super curious and they do their own thing. They're not looking for authority to tell them what to do. And another thing is they have an extra sense, where I know personally some of my friends' kids can read blindfolded. They can completely read. They can look at things that are behind them. They have this extraordinary sense that, you know, we are not able to, probably didn't train, but these kids have natural to them. So I feel like this is just giving a sign for all of us to know that it is going to happen.
Right. The indigo children, right? Or rainbow children. Something. Yeah, I know. I got two in my house, bro. I got a 7 and a 9-year-old, and me and my wife were often like floored, bro, by some of the things they do. They say, they create. We're like, what, bro? It's speechless.
Yeah. Have you heard of human design? If you get a chance, go look at their charts and see how you can, you know, cultivate their own, you know, what they bring, their gifts to reality, because human design.
Okay.
You know, an opportunity to make decisions. They can make decisions based on their type and energetic type, their strategy. It's pretty deep, but it's really worth the time.
Yeah. Ishan introduced that to me. Is definitely very interesting, and I've seen how a lot of the different archetypes that people can have in regards to human design is really, it's true. I've seen it from my own experience. So I would
You could
definitely
even
say
use
check that out.
ChatGPT. Yeah, you could just use ChatGPT, put it, ask it for your human design, your birth date, time, location. But
Oh,
spits out these crazy information that is so pinpoint accurate. You'll be like, "There's no way."
wow. Wow. That's incredible. I love it. I mean, we're learning lots of things that, again, what the ancient people already knew. And I love it when it like kind of, modern day scientists catches up with the ancient ones. Like, and then I always have these visions of they bring all the science. Oh, we've discovered this and all that. And then, the ones who have the knowledge, who've been having it, they're scratching their head like, I've been telling you all this time. I can't believe this guy. That's what I've been telling you. You didn't need all
Yeah.
the machines and all that, man.
Yeah. One of
Yeah.
the most important things that I've noticed when I first got into like all of like learning about all this information, is I was kind of telling everybody about it until I realized they're not going to listen to me until somebody else tells them. Especially if it's like immediate family. For some reason, it's like it's impossible to get across them from what you're learning about. But if somebody else says it, then they're like, "Oh, that's interesting. That's it." So it goes to show like a lot of people still have holes in their consciousness, even us who are not perfect.
When the student is ready, right?
Yeah,
that's when the master shows up, because that's happened to me oftentimes too. I come to my wife, man, honey, I heard this new thing, and she's like, I told you that same thing before. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. But then how about the sound frequencies that are coming up too? Like, this is a huge thing that's happening now, because we talk about energy. What's energy? They're wavelengths of vibration. That's all that it is. That's what everything, right? Scientists are another one. They know that everything is just vibrating at a different frequency, right? That's why we don't fall through the floor or something like that. Like, it's just vibrating different. So when it comes to like the sound healings, man, they're like blowing cancer right out of the stratosphere, depression, all kinds of things.
The best part is that this girl or woman, I would say, her name is Eileen McCusick, and she's been doing tuning forks for about 12 years, and she's created a whole system where you can map out. It's called the biofield tuning, where you map out in every location where your trauma is held in your biofield. So when you're using a tuning fork and you're hitting those dissonance, it is pinpoint accurate on like what age. The biofield holds the age, it holds the information, it holds the trauma, and the tuning fork is a way to access it. The sound is a way to access it, and then you can use a certain frequency depending on what weighted tuning fork you're using to then clear that or harmonize it in a way that doesn't create that dissonance anymore. So that sound technology is the future, and I think it's very much going to be one of the primary care physicians in the future.
Yeah, I man, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And one of the things that I talk about with some of my some of my people is that we're going back to the future. That's one of my things that I like to repeat to myself. And when you talk about sound healing, one of the most powerful things that we could look at is the drum, which is arguably the oldest instrument besides the throat. But that drum, that shamanic drum, man, like they've done scientific studies on it, and it literally has the ability to structure water in a harmonious way. And we talked about this at the event, where it's like, what kind of water are you drinking? If you're drinking any old type of water, you need to know how to clear it, and then you need to know how to structure it so that it has the correct type of structure that's going to feed you on a cellular level. Because if you're just drinking any old kind of water straight from it, I hope you guys aren't drinking tap water. I know you're not. But
No.
if you are drinking those types of things, they're coming with a specific frequency. They're already loaded with the metals and the PFAS, and who knows what these facilities have playing in terms of frequency at these water cleaning facilities. So we have to keep all these things into account when we're showering. We need to speak to ourselves, and we need to speak to the water, like how you mentioned at the beginning of the show, because in the same way that, you know, sound can be used as a powerful healer, it can also be used as a potent poison. All these different things that we're talking about can be used on the other end of the spectrum. So light can either be extremely powerful as a medicine or as a poison. Sound can either be extremely powerful as a medicine or as a poison. Even these devices, these telephones, they can either be extremely powerful as a tool to connect us, as you can see now, or they can be used as a distraction, and they can, you know, lead us away from where we're supposed to be.
Is the
So
poison.
yeah, so it all goes back to like discernment and understanding, like how can we use these tools in the highest and best way, so that I think the best way to bring about and the best way to heal an individual, to heal yourself, is to be in that state of sovereignty, to the point where we don't even need a device to communicate, because our ancestors didn't even need this thing, you know.
Right.
But that's another conversation. But you know, they were just on a whole entire other level that so many people can't even conceive of. So I just think it's so important now more than ever that we use these tools on a consistent and daily basis. Even if you're called weird or called, you know, you're the odd one out, which many of us have been, it's okay. It really doesn't matter. Soon everyone's going to be coming to you and asking you for questions, asking you for insights, asking you for all these different things. And it's your job as the teacher to help them, and to, you know, from that place of unconditional love, not to hold grudges towards others who may have, you know, singled you out or called you a weirdo. They were sick. They were sick at the time, and this is something that I talk a lot about with some of my close people. It's like, in the Buddha said this, like, you gotta love your enemies. The people that hate you, just realize they're sick. You know what I mean? So I think applying these tools on a consistent basis is what's going to allow us to get to that point of self-sovereignty, to where we can just be at the highest level all the time. That's what I think healing is all about.
Definitely. It makes me think of the study of cymatics, right, which is about vibration. And I think it was a German scientist who put the sand on the flat metal. Say again?
Are you talking about Dr. Emoto?
No. Him I know. My wife put me on to him. We have some books on him. People always grab that book, bro. She's working with that for real, because that's why I told you in the beginning, I prayed in my water. Right, every morning I say what, because I'm infusing that energy into me, you know. But the cymatics, right? When you there was I think it was a German scientist that he put the sand on the flat metal surface and he struck it with a violin bow, and then he saw that with the sound of the vibration, it caused different patterns. But then he started noticing that those same patterns were in nature, like the turtle's back, like the sunflower seeds, sunflower. Have you guys ever seen Inner World, Outer World?
Inner World, Outer World.
No. It's on YouTube. It's like a 4-part. Yeah, it's powerful. And you get to see many things. That's just one of the things.
Fractal nature of reality, I'm guessing.
Fractal nature. That's why we have 2 eyes and 5 fingers. Like, it's just vibration, just growing.
Yeah, like the phi. I know a lot of people talk about the phi energy is like embedded in everybody, the 3.14. One of the things that I realized when I first got into all this, I used to like record the stars, and every time I zoomed in on the stars, there would be a specific cymatics going on. I'm like, what is that? So when I learned about cymatics, I was like, oh, maybe the stars are just vibrational frequencies hitting us at certain times. That's why astrology is so important to know, because then you can understand what the kind of day is going to happen, what kind of lifestyle is going to humanity is going through, the processes and the ins and out. And so cymatics is a beautiful thing. One more thing I would like to mention is about 2 years ago, like I started working or I started like taking courses with these people called the Bigelsen brothers. And what they do is really, really interesting. So their father back in the day took a drop of blood, and they would put it under a dark field microscopy, or the dark field microscope, and you would see these emotions that show up in the blood. It's called holographic blood because it's not the red blood cells, it's not the white blood cells, it's an actual image that shows up. And so sometimes like a kidney would show up, and if you know like Chinese medicine, kidney is related to fear. right? So like these patterns that show up in the blood are kind of you're having your body's always trying to communicate with you what it needs to be worked on. And so using that as a tool, like when I first heard about it and started working with it, I'm like, wow, this could really change the game. But then again, people are not ready for that information yet.
Right. Right.
Yeah, big facts.
Yeah.
That's why they you know, there's a saying and it goes that millionaires don't have astrologers, billionaires do, you know. So it's true, man. Like that's the highest science, and that's why and another thing, when you mention the blood, I know the ancients would say that the blood is where all the life force was. So this is why, like, and I don't want to get too much into this, but when we look at quote unquote rituals, like they're always including some type of blood, you know, and this is what would scare people away from that type of, you know, concept, because oh my God, blood, it's scary, but they don't understand that this is where the most potent life force energy is. So if you're, let's say, for example, you know, you're viewing somebody doing a quote unquote ritual, you see the shamans and the, you know, the African people, and they're jumping and they're dancing, they're charging their bodies, you know, they're grounded and they're receiving those positive ions from the sun. So they're like literally creating like a field in this quote unquote ritual. They got the fire, they got the fire burning, they got the alcohol or whatever beverage that they're drinking to alter the consciousness. And then they take the blood, which is infused with all this energy that they just created in this field. So now it's like, whatever you want, it comes like this, because it's a science. It's not even a matter of making it woo-woo. So we don't want to go too deep with this stuff, because if some people heard what I just said, they get scared. Oh man, this guy's into witchcraft. Like, no, I'm not. I'm just telling you that all this stuff is science, and they try to scare you from it because they don't want you to know who you are. I mean, that's really what it is to it.
It is crazy when you look at all ancient cultures. They all some form of ritual. I mean, even ones that you wouldn't think of. I don't want to name some of them now because they just might not. You know, they might cut me off. But really, you know, once you hear, they go, "What? That's crazy!" Yeah, they're doing that. It has to do with blood. They bring in animals and those type of things. You know, it makes me think of like you know, the Aztecas and the Mayans. Like when the Europeans show up, they were doing the ball games, and then right, and then they were cutting the heads off, and which I learned that it wasn't the losers that got the heads cut off. No, it was the winners. See, and we can't grasp that concept, because for them it was a high honor, bro, to be you know, decapitated there at the ball game and win, bro. Yeah, it was like that, you know. But the Europeans saw it and it was like, yeah, they're savages. Look what they're doing with the blood. They're taking the heart out and all of this. They're just evil, you know. Meanwhile, as if they did better, you know. And then, you know, you think about some of the churches. One second, brother. When you think of some of the churches and religions, right? You see Jesus there with all this blood coming down his head and all. He's hanging on a cross. Like, that's crazy. We don't see it as crazy. We just see it as normal now, you know. But go ahead, brother.
It goes into that whole concept of like creation and destruction. Like, you could view the death as a negative thing, but you can also view it as a rebirth. So it's like, it's like you go through that quote unquote ritual of the ball game, like how you mentioned, and you get to use all this energy and you get to leave in that positive state, and now you're uniting with God. Like, we have to realize that they were utilizing all these tools in high level ritual. Like, this was an entire drawn out thing that this individual probably had been waiting for his or her entire life. And not to mention, he's probably off 30 grams of some type of substance, you know what I mean? So he's like he's literally feeling God at that time, you know what I mean? So
right.
As soon when he wins the ball game and he goes, you know, to do the business, it's like he's ready for that. He's been praying and wishing for that his entire life, because there is no attachment to, you know, the physical world. It's about going back to the truth of reality, you know. So, you know, I think that mind shift is really what's gonna take people's evolution to the next level.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you guys a question. because I've seen, or I've like, did a little research on stuff like this, but like the old buildings, what are these structures that they were there for? How were they used for evolving? Have you guys thought about that?
I mean, why are they all made and like it looks like they were made from sound? They don't look like they weren't made. The ancients weren't using cranes, bro. They weren't using these freaking. They weren't building square boxes. If we look all throughout these different, ancient sites, temples, pyramids, and all these things, they use sound. They had to have used sound. How else did they do it? If we just logically, like, how did they make these structures? I know there's one in India where it's like there's like this floating like pillar. I don't know if you guys
the floating pillar. The floating pillar. Yeah.
Like, how did they do this? And it's literally created to like such a specific what's the word that I'm looking for? Like shape. It's like you couldn't have done this with like chipping away at something. You couldn't have done this in the way that they thought that they did it. But it just goes to show how like we're really going back to the future. Like how I mentioned, like all these different ancient sciences are coming back. So it's like, who knows how they did it? Did they have maybe some massive clay or some watery substance, and then they all come together?
I think it has to do with water because a lot of these structures are near water.
Yeah,
there's some interplay with water and structure for sure.
Right.
So imagine it's like they take all these massive watery areas, and then they're mixing it with particular compounds and metals. This is getting into like alchemy, and then everyone comes together and they play a frequency. Then it's like this building is now holding a shape based, and then somehow, some way they condense it. Who knows? You know what I mean?
Literally crystallized it.
Crystallizing. So it's like we can sit here and explain it, but to put it into practice, I think this is where we're going. This is where I'm sorry, but this is where we're going.
Yeah.
We're going back to the future.
I like to say that if you want to learn about what's been going on in the planet, look to India. India will show you there's something was going on here on the planet, bro. They've recorded all of these things. It's there. People say, oh, that's just fairy tale. No, it's not, bro. It's true. Things were going. There were flying machines. There was lots of things going on. And then when you go to India and you look at the temples, right? Because I've done quite a bit of research on this myself. You would need diamond cutting technology to do some of these things, bro. It's just baffling. You don't even know. You can't even begin to think. Like, we can't even do many of those things. Then you talk about the megaliths, right? The structures that were put into place, lined up with the stars. And bro, I learned about an ancient writing where in ancient Kemet, modern day Egypt, they spoke about where the high priest had something in his hand and he struck it. And the rock lifted itself and went to the position and placed itself there, bro.
Yeah.
Yep.
Believe that.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like that goes into the concept of like the high priest being, this is going into the whole concept of like being connected with everything. And this is kind of like how you feel when you're on the mushroom, or, the whole concept of like, I mentioned this at Roots and Resonance Yoga, which is like unity with everything. So it's like they had to have been in such a high state to where it was like these beings are not experiencing reality in the way that you and I are. It's like, this marker right here, they know that they're not separate from it. So then they use these tools, these natural organic tools that they're surrounded with, and then you strike something and you basically are sending a signal to this conscious marker to get it to go here and then go here and then sit down. So it's like, it's really just science. That's what I love about this, that we can like, nowadays we can explain how these things could have possibly happened. Now, like how I just mentioned, it's about like learning how to put these things back into practice, because no matter what we do, we're going back. We're going there.
Right.
I want to definitely touch upon this topic because, we are definitely going back, but it's a different type of going back because I now have technology with us. Now, how are we going to use this tech to influence like the Back to the Future, because we can't be fully Back to the Future. Everybody's gonna have AI. Everybody's gonna have a laptop, tech. How are we gonna now introduce it to a whole nother level?
Yeah. You know, in ancient Kemet, they had those schools, right? Mystery schools, and even, you know, major philosophers would tell you that they learned all their things from Kemet. They tell you Socrates, all them cats. They tell, it's in the writing, bro. We give them, you know, Hippocrates. Oh, he's the, you know, of modern medicine. No, he's not. No, he learned it from over there. And those schools, they wrote that oftentimes it could take 20 years to get into one of those schools, bro. You know why? Because if you knew how to create an atom bomb, would you just teach that to anybody? Nah, man, you're not getting into school. You know. You know, there would have to be some screening process.
I remember I don't remember where I heard this, but in the Kemetan culture, they would say that a man or a woman's life didn't start until they were like 50 years old. This is when life truly started, because this is when you actually began to like, and this is, you know, it's more or less that number, but this is like when you're getting to the point where you actually know yourself, right? And not to put a number to an age, you know, I'm just throwing out that fact, but it just goes to show how like a lot of 50-year-olds now, they get hit with the whole midlife crisis, and they're like, okay, I'm just waiting to die. I know some people like that, and it's a shame, but it goes into how much these ancients actually learned before they started their life. Like they, in these mystery schools, they learned about like sexual transmutation and all these things that is just now coming up, and people are just now getting into this information, like the Taoist practices of like learning how to bring the energy up the spine and all these things. This was like, but this is again why all these things have been used against humanity to try to bring us down, where we talk about like the negative music and the porn and the bad food, because they know that we're going back to this place once again. So it's like, if we could try to stop them as much as we can from reaching this pinnacle, then maybe we can be in control for a little bit longer, you know. But I think it's just about going back to that place of like understanding that these high sciences are real and not being scared of them, because I think subconsciously a lot of people are scared to go back into these practices and to go back into this way of living, because it's been so programmed for us to be scared of things that are moving us forward. Like honestly,
you know, here where I live, on my front door there, I put a sign and it says, "Know thyself." Why? Because in ancient Kemet, on those temples, before you went in, on the top of the entrance, it said, "Know thyself." It was almost as if they were saying, listen, get to know who you are first before you come in here and be asking for any prayers and all of that, you know. And when you went to go see the oracle in Adelphi too, they said it was there also.
I really like, I love that you mentioned oracle, because I really like getting into like divination arts and like the tarot, and understanding that, you know, this was before psychology was a thing. This was a way to get somebody's reading and psychological insights through the tarot, and the stuff that it guides you to, the intelligence behind images and visions, and like being creative with the way that things show up. I love that aspect.
Yep. So here we're the Omziel Healing Sanctuary. We're located in North Bergen, New Jersey, and there's a couple of things that we push here too. One of them is like the calendar, right? 13 months, 12 months, that doesn't matter. Just use it as a tracking system, right? In order for you to know who you are and to elevate yourself as well, right? But we do breath work, we do ice plunge and all that, but we also share books with people. We have a file of audio books, which I have your emails now. I will send it to you. And, you know, I was buying books and then they sit around collecting dust. I just wasn't taking the time, you know, to sit by the fire and snuggling up with a nice book. You know, I just wasn't doing it, bro. So I started doing the audio books. And like every time I drive or go somewhere, like I'll take the long way, just, you know, to start devouring all of these books. Why? So you could get to know yourself. And all of that research that you're talking about, Ishan, you know, and you too, GJ, it's all there. It's in the books, you know. Chew the meat, spit out the bones. Whatever you need, take it in. Whatever it doesn't, you know, jive with you, they'll be like, nah, you know, just push it to the side. Take the message, not the messenger, right? You talk about Osho and all these guys. Maybe, yeah, you know, maybe you don't like him. Nah, he was. It doesn't matter. Take his message, like Jesus, virgin birth, or he rose in 3 days. What would that matter anyway, bro? Really? What about see what he said? Love thy neighbor as thyself, and you know those type of things, man. Do what he did. You know.
For sure, yeah. I think one of the things I want to end off on is the idea is of building a community and building a space for people to have these conversations more often.
For sure. Yeah, we're gonna wrap it up with that. How about you, GJ? What are your last words here, brother?
Yeah, I believe in the same thing. I think right now it's just so important to come into community and to get back into self, into working with the earth, so that we can go back to that place. That's basically it, man. That's what this kind of got me souped up, because it has me craving, you know, what real life is, you know, living in at our highest level, living, you know, in harmony with nature, and utilizing these high sciences, not just studying them, but putting them into practice. And we can only do this when we come together and we connect back with the earth, and we connect back with ourselves, so that we could shift the consciousness, so that we can experience this bliss together. You know, that's what I'm excited for.
I appreciate that. Thank you so
So
much. You know,
it starts with you guys.
That's it. That's right. That's right. Be the change you want to see in the world. That's it.
Yep.
I love that. Gandhi, he's another one, man. You know, look at those guys, man. Here he is on the train, right? It was a Harvard graduate and all that, and they told him to go to the back. He said no. They kicked him in the ass off the train. And what did he do? He changed the world. He's like, I'll show you. Yeah, start with me, you know.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, guys. You know, we're having a very big festival. It's called the Purple Sage Festival. It's happening on June 28th, which is approximately 2 months from now. Love for you guys to be there, to participate, whatever it is that you're doing, if you're still around, or if you know people, you know, vendors or people who want to do a workshop or speak out, or, you know, somebody want to chef it up or juice it up or books it up, you know, let us know. Let us know.
Yeah, where is that going to be at?
That's happening in New Paltz, New York. It's up by Woodstock. So
okay. Yeah.
All the location is new. I had never been there, but it's beautiful.
Beautiful.
I drove through the town. So cute, man. Great cafes, restaurant, things to buy. And then about 10 minutes away from there is the farm. And the people who own it, it's called the Stone Mountain Farm. They have over 250 acres of land. So we'll be doing the men's retreat on May 23rd, 24th, 25th there. You could hike their land alone, bro. They have access to lakes, waterfall, rock climbing, like everything. They're conscious, they're creators.
Is it camping, the event?
It's a camping event. So yeah, let's say you go like, well, I'm a city boy, you know, me don't have nothing, man, no camp area, no. Don't worry, we'll help to provide some of the tents and all that for sleeping and meals. Your meals are included, and we do some deep work. You know, we're going to do some cold water plunges too, early up in the mountain water right there, you know.
That's what's up. Yo, purple is that color. We were talking about it. Purple is the royal color. So I love the name.
Right. One of the things we think about is that in the scriptures, it talks about after they beat Jesus or Yahshua, after they beat him, they threw him the purple robe, right? They could have said they threw him a towel or they threw him a robe. They could have but they said purple. Why? Because again, the codes are there, just like the astronomical, you know, things that you guys spoke about. It's there. It's all there. Just read it with the open mind, you know. Okay. So where can they find you guys?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at inter.flows, FLOWS, or my personal Instagram at Ishan.Mishra.
Yeah, and you can find me at P1 Health on Instagram. And my website is just p1health.1. So instead of .com, it's .1. So p1health.1. Yeah, hit us up, reach out to us. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up. So
Yep, building. This is how we do it, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you, and I see you on the next one. Thank you.
all right,
Peace.
peace. Thank you.
Peace.